You're welcome back, everybody. Our next speaker is Susie Birney. Susie is the Executive Director of the Irish Coalition for People Living with Obesity and is herself a patient representative. And of course, Susie has obesity stigma, or the addressing of obesity stigma, as a primary focus and believes that all of us have a role to play in doing so. So Susie's going to discuss the work that has been done in the development of the Irish Coalition for People Living with Obesity and the kind of work they are doing to address obesity and to support people who are living with obesity. You're very welcome, Susie.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. I'll just warn you in advance that I'm really not good with slides, so that will sort it out if it goes wrong. So my name is Susie Birney. I live with obesity. I'll say that first and foremost. That's why I'm here. But to start it off, people expect you to go straight into your whole life history and your story and how you got to be here. But I'm actually a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a partner. I'm a swimming fanatic. I've been teaching swimming part-time on a Saturday morning for 28 years. And I'm a person. I have an eating disorder, ARFID. And this was probably one of the first things that I focused on as being the problem with my weight when I was young. So that's avoidance restrictive food intake disorder, which is not very well known. It's been added to the DSM-5 since 2014. Type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome and pain. There are some of the challenges that I've had throughout my life. I'm an ASOI patient representative since 2016. And that's one of my proudest, I think, achievements of when I started to become an advocate. Myself and Maura, who's here today, Maura started a Facebook support group 10 years ago. And from that, we started coming up with ideas of how patients can help each other and how we can support each other. And that's something that's not widely known. People think people with obesity don't help themselves, and we do, and we've been doing that for years. So I'm also a patient representative with ECPO, who actually were originally part of the ASOI Patient Council. So I was the Irish representative there in Europe. So I kind of did things a little bit backwards, that I went to Europe first before focusing more, I suppose, what's happening in Ireland. But through meeting people over in Europe, that's where I learned that actually patients have a voice, that their voice is important. I learned from advocates who are doing this 20 years and knew that we needed a patient organisation in Ireland. So that's when we began the work on ICPO, which we're now established since July 2020. So, unfortunately, I do have personal experience of weight stigma. We know that people do the before and after pictures, but I'm not going to do that straight away. Stigma from family was one of the hardest ones, I think, that I had to recognise and try and figure out how to change. My mother was particularly one of the worst, I suppose you could say, unintentional. She would say to me, Susie, I am not sleeping at night. I think you're going to die. I think you're going to die with this weight. Can you please do something? And I was trying to do something, but it's pretty hard that I'm worried about her, she's worried about me, and we're in this vicious circle. I had bariatric surgery and regained, and my father would say, the head goes sideways. Really, Susie, are you piling the weight back on? Not just, Susie, I'm worried, it's you're piling the weight back on. That comes from family, and it's particularly hard when you know you're upsetting them, but it's not through your choice. So this is something that is now more prevalent than any other weight stigma. Rebecca Poole's research now shows that stigma in the family has preceded every other type of stigma in healthcare and society. So stigma from society. I think one example comes to my mind is when I went to join a gym. And again, the stereotype that, you know, if you're weighing 25 stone, you're not going to walk into a gym. Well, I told you I'm a swimming fanatic, and one of the best pools that was near me, I wanted to join, so I went, and, you know, you do initiation to join the gym. And the guy said, we have to fill out this form, you know, are you this, are you that? And he said, I need you to do one more thing now. Please don't worry about it. I don't want you to hurt yourself. And he was all like apologetic. And he said, can you just bend down as if to touch your toes? He said, I have to ask you. I'm really sorry, I have to ask you. And I'm weighing 25 stone. I said, yeah, no problem, like this. And I put my hands on the ground. And he literally went, oh my God. He said, I judged you. I'm really sorry. Can we start over again? And I said, yes, let's start over. Don't judge somebody by how they look. So that's just one example of many, unfortunately. Stigma from healthcare professionals, well, this is a difficult one, where to start. We heard from Stuart earlier, we heard from Sarah, we've heard examples, and it is real, and unfortunately, it is really prevalent. I have one example, which I've probably shared a bit too much, but in Beaumont Hospital, I went for a kidney exam, and I was told, you're just too fat, you'll have to come back. How can I lose the weight that quickly? The problem is, the outcome of weight stigma is you don't go back, and I didn't. And I remember that nurse's face to this day, that I did not go back for that exam. Luckily, nothing was wrong. With healthcare professionals, my own GP has said to me, oh, I see you've regained after your bariatric surgery, Susie. You know, what's happening, and are you trying? And I said, well, we do know obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. And he said, oh no, that takes away personal responsibility. And I looked at him and I said, when have you ever known me not to take personal responsibility? You've referred me to cognitive behavioural therapy, neuro-linguistic therapy, everything possible that I could do to try and address what I thought was the only fix was my ARFID. He's been there on my journey. He referred me to the weight management service. He's referred me to Beaumont for my diabetes. At what point did he forget I was always taking personal responsibility? But it is coupled with professional help. This is the worst one, stigma for myself. And that one I didn't really recognise for a long, long time. And people would say, why do you care about the stranger on the street when they throw a look? Because people do. When you weigh 25 stone, they look away and they look back. And you see the microaggressions, the twitch of the face, the disgust, they look away. Stuart has mentioned the disgust. Resonates every single bit, because you saw it every single day. It wasn't that I cared about what that stranger thought, it's that it reflected what I thought about myself. And that was very hard to understand, that was very hard to accept. Stigma for yourself, when you've lost weight and regained, and lost weight and regained, and lost weight and regained, you're broken. You really are. And Maura and I are advocates now that in particular I said about the European Coalition. So there's trips each year, you go to ECO, you fly to another country, which is a challenge with my food disorder. So you're travelling home and you go to the airport, and we all know what the airport is like. So there's a McDonald's or there's a Burger King. So I have my dinner. That's my dinner for the day. Afterwards, Vicky will say to me, Susie, send your receipts over. You should not be out of pocket for this. Anything that you've had to pay for meals or taxis, please send your receipts. Will I send a receipt from McDonald's? No, not a hope. Haven't done it yet, still haven't done it. Even though I'm saying this now, I'm fully aware that I'm stigmatising myself. I won't send a McDonald's receipt, not a hope. Because I feel that it's something shameful, even though I know better. So self-internalized stigma is very hard to describe, but it is very, very real. Before and after pictures, I absolutely hate them. Really, really hate them. We see a lot of people getting up, doing presentations showing before and after. Treatment isn't about weight loss. Treatment for obesity is nothing about weight loss. These are my before pictures. I was miserable, but I was happy. I was functioning, I was fit, I was swimming a mile 4 days a week at 25 stone, but I was struggling. The picture on the right on holidays, I was looking from bench to bench where I could stop and sit. The after pictures, after bariatric surgery, got to 11 stone 3, and people said, you look sick. You need to stop losing weight now. Your face looks gaunt. God, your forehead looks big, Susie. That's the comments you get. People think it's something that's voluntary control, that you can just press a button and stop it. But at 11 stone 3, I hadn't reached my normal weight. So when we're using words, and I'll talk a bit about words later, try not to use the words normal weight or normal BMI, because what is normal? I was told I wasn't normal there, and I was 11 stone 3. For my height, maybe I'm a bit older than the BMI days, but for my height, I was told to be between 8 and 10 stone. I never achieved the 10 stone there. So I really hope, if nothing else, that people move away from BMI, move away from this concept of normal weight. That's the real before and after picture. That was my legs before surgery, and that was my legs after surgery. Surgery, weight loss, does not fix everything that you have that comes with obesity. I still have swollen legs. You're going to see me hopping like this. You know, we deal with different things, and that's the real before and after picture. So, on to the Irish Coalition for People with Obesity, something I'm really, really proud of, proud to lead with Maura. That is our mission, patient-led. We're all volunteers. I know with the title's Executive Director, it might seem like it's a paid position, but unfortunately it's not. But we're passionate, we're dedicated, we put a lot of hours in because we're seeing change, and we're moving at a time when change is happening. Some of the work we do, I'm going to try and flick through this. We might gather back that 10 minutes, Aileen. We address stigma by all the work that we do, basically, day to day. So these are the committees we're on. On every committee we're on, I will raise any topic I hear about words and about stigma, particularly about how words matter, and I'll go into that a bit later. This is some of the research we're involved in, and again, raising every opportunity about stigma on every single one of these. We've had to push back one or two of them where we've really been sort of tokens, where, you know, it's, can you sign this form for PPI? It's to be in next Friday. What do you want us to do? How do you want us to be involved? Oh, just sign the form. No, sorry. I know the work you're doing might have a great outcome, but for us, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. So we're very busy for our small team, but that's some of what we're doing. In presentations, like we're doing now, in any presentation we do, we will mention stigma in some way, shape or form. Today the topic is stigma, which is fantastic, but sometimes it's not. And we will still talk about it no matter where we're talking. That's just a snapshot of some of what we've done. In the media, this is the most difficult one, the really most difficult one, because this is where you're stepping outside of this arena. This is a group of people here who are invested in this, you're interested, you're here because you care. But when you go onto the radio or onto the television, you get a text message from your auntie or somebody you knew in school 20 years ago, and you just feel sick because you're putting a part of your life in the public, and it is really, really hard to do. And people often say, like, God, Susie Moore, you do a lot of interviews. Quite often you get a phone call and you're told, we need somebody in an hour to talk to the newspaper. And I'm walking around Dunnes Stores doing my shopping going, Marion, can you do it? No, I'm picking up the kids. Sheila, can you do it? No, I'm doing this. And we can't get people that quickly, especially if they don't have the confidence. And sometimes they'll say, what's the topic? Do I need to know statistics? I haven't had time to prepare. So the media is particularly hard for us, and it's something we have to work on more. But I think if you can see the list there, the ones with the stars, by the way, are the multiple ones. So we're doing quite well. Tackling stigma. ICPO tackled stigma here before we were even formed. We weren't officially formed. It was the comic relief, and the character rat stood on stage and basically said, if you've got obesity, stay at home. So we said this isn't good enough, and we individually wrote some letters of complaints, which was interesting because we got the answer back. So then when we did a joint complaint, we addressed their answers. And unfortunately, it wasn't taken on board. And it really, I would love to link in with Stuart in the future about how we can get this seen as a discrimination. Because the answer was, now we quoted their broadcasting standards. We said to them that it is harmful in their own words of what they say they won't do. And they said that because it's not listed as one of the 5, I think it was, gender, ethnic background, religion, race, that it didn't count. But you know what? All of those weren't on that list at some point. Somebody somewhere fought to have them on that list. So is it not time that we did? How do we get on the list? Who's going to drive that forward? I mean, we're going to be part of it if somebody can, but we can't do it on our own. We've got to do it together. They said that 1.4 million only tuned in, and only a handful of people complained. Well, when we decided to do the joint complaint, we asked people in our support groups, who of course signed up. Stuart signed up, Niamh signed up, Aileen signed up. There's the list of people who signed up, but they said they didn't have enough complaints. Now, if we were to do that now, I would say we could probably triple or 4 times that amount, because we weren't even formed then. ICPO probably wasn't even known then, but that wasn't enough. We had some organisations there, you can see, Obesity Action Coalition in America. They all signed it to say this wasn't right. Other times that we have addressed obesity stigma was recently there was a GAA game, the All-Ireland Schools final, 2 teams playing, and the goalkeeper on one side was living with excess weight. I don't think of like, you wouldn't say obesity, probably overweight. And the crowd from the opposite team chanted, "You fat bastard, ha ha ha," throughout the game. Not just once, throughout the game. One of the dads that was there came to us and said to us, he said, "I was sitting there with my 16-year-old daughter, I did not know what to say to her." So he knew somebody, he knew the coach, I think, of one of the teams, and he said it to him, and the coach said, "Oh, don't mind that, he's got a thick skin, it doesn't bother him." Really? Because we hide how we feel about obesity. We hide every bit of the challenges. We pretend everything is fine. So I'm sure that child who's only 18 or 19 playing sport, which people think that when you live with obesity, you're not playing sport, he's on the pitch. He's playing sport, and he is being stigmatised, and nobody stopped it. So we wrote a letter ourselves, Grace O'Malley from the Childhood Services. There was about 4 or 5 signatures on it, and we explained exactly what weight stigma is and how it harms. And the answer back was, Yes, it does come under our bullying standard, their code for bullying, but wasn't it a pity nobody did something on the day? And that was the answer. This isn't good enough. We've got to do better than that. To have a child stigmatised on a pitch like that, grown adults shouting at them, is not right. Another time that we challenged weight stigma, Maura doesn't mind me sharing her story. Maura went to the breast check clinic, routine breast check clinic, and she said to the lady, "Can you please be careful because I can tear easily?" And the woman said, "Well, now, if you lost a bit of weight, Maura." Maura has lost 12 stone. Visually, Maura might look like she needs to lose more weight, but she's at her healthiest right now. And this woman decided to look at her and say, "Well, actually, Maura, if you lost a bit of weight." And Maura did tear badly, that they had to stop the test. And what did the woman say? "Come back next week." And Maura said, "Do you think I'm going to lose that weight in 1 week?" And the outcome was, Maura said to me, and she said it to our support group, "I'm not going back. I can't face that. I can't face that again." But luckily she brought it up at an ASOI meeting, and the ASOI drafted a letter, sent to the breast check department, and they actually answered and said, "We are incredibly sorry to hear of that experience, and we're going to circulate this to all our departments and raise awareness about this, that this isn't good enough." Another time that we addressed stigma was with Catherine, one of our members, again, doesn't mind sharing her story. Catherine was having a gynecological appointment, and she overheard the consultant come out and say to the receptionist, he whispered, saying, "This is really embarrassing, it's all her weight. I don't know what to say, how to approach it, but it's pretty obvious this is her weight." Catherine overheard it, and he came into her and he said, "I'm very sorry, but if you did something about your weight." Catherine has been waiting in our system for 4 or 5 years. She is trying to do something. She just hasn't had treatment yet. She helps others. She's one of our most prominent ICPO members at our support group. And yet this is what she gets, if you did something. She came to our meeting that night, and I'm getting a little, if you see me tapping here, it's because the tears are near. She cried, and she was upset, and she wasn't going to go back. This is the 3rd time I'm mentioning this. Somebody wasn't going to go back for treatment. So we wrote a letter, and we explained what weight stigma was, and she wrote her personal piece underneath saying how he made her feel. And she got an apology where he said, "I'm so sorry, I was not aware of how my words made you feel." So these are the positive changes we can make by calling out weight stigma where and when we can. So Roux-en-Y who did a research paper with physiotherapy students, and one of the lines, and Maura and I keep saying we must get the exact percentage, but about 54% said they would not be bothered working with people with obesity because we've no willpower. So we said, okay, there's the research, what's next? What happens now? So we formed a committee, there was 6 of us, with Roux-en-Y and ourselves, ICPO, and we said we want to address this. There's now 20 on the committee, and our aim is to have obesity stigma education put onto all curriculum. It's a pretty big ask, it's probably going to take a while. So the low-hanging fruit is we hold stigma education talks with students. So they're the students that we had talks with last year. We go on to Zoom, we've got one this Thursday night with the medical students. Dr. Jean O'Connell now joins us. She does 20 minutes on exactly like what we've heard from Stuart. And then we come in about 8 patients. We've got a man in his 60s. We've got a girl in her 30s. We've got a wide variety of us there showing this is complex. It's not just typical stories. It's not one story. It's 8 stories in various different manners, and how bad weight stigma has an outcome for people living with obesity. And the reaction from the students is actually really, really good. We actually got about 4 or 5 new Twitter followers, and anybody who knows me on Twitter, I love it and hate it, but it has its impact and it's sharing awareness. So that's us actually. I wasn't even aware that was the next slide. That's us on Twitter. That was the World Obesity Day Ireland hashtag alone, and we reached 1.4 million impressions. And you can see ICPO, myself, Maura, many of the team are up there doing our bit to raise awareness, but more importantly, every time there's a big event, we get 1 or 2 people saying, "Can I join your support group? I didn't know you were there. I didn't know. I felt I was on my own." That to us is what's really important. We have videos that we made. 2 of them are on stigma of World Obesity Day. These are available if you want. They're talks between healthcare professionals and patients. Leona's in one of them. You're going to hear her next. Niamh is in one. These were frank conversations between people living with obesity and healthcare professionals, not just the healthcare professionals standing on stage talking about people living with obesity. People living with obesity being part of the conversation. So they're there if anybody ever wants to use in a presentation or to share or as you want. The obesity clinical guidelines, ICPO were a part of it from the start with ASOI, and I was delighted to be part of the stigma chapter again with Leona and Niamh and Jean. And I have to say, I don't even think I have the words for how important that was, But we really are very proud of the guidelines, and if you haven't seen the guidelines yet, go onto the ASOI website, you'll find them there to download. We're the first European country to have adapted the Canadian guidelines, and actually Canada want to adapt our model of care, which is really good. So I think if you have the time, go onto the ASOI website. Most importantly, we address stigma in our support groups. So we can go onto a meeting and somebody will come on and they'll say, I've been really bad this week, I had some really bad food. And we're like, there's no bad food. You're going through a hard time. We know your husband's in hospital or your child is at home sick. So we address it within our groups and we make people understand what self-internalized stigma is. Not to be hard on yourself. You're doing your best. You're here at a meeting. That's huge. We often get somebody come back to a meeting who says, I haven't been here in a year. I actually had to work up the courage to come because I thought you might feel like I abandoned you. No, we're there. We're there to support everybody all the time, but raising awareness even within our meetings about stigma. So words matter. People who know me will really know this is important for me. When you go into a consultation, quite often because of your weight, you'll hear, did you not know? Have you not tried? As soon as you hear those words, the negative words, a wall goes up because you think, this person thinks I'm stupid. I've tried this, and this, but they're immediately assuming that I haven't. Look at the difference if somebody approaches you and says, did you know? I did role play with Dr. Michael Crotty where we actually did this, where he spoke the negative words to me and I'm on Zoom doing this and you can see I withdraw. I lean back and I get defensive and my face changes. But when we did the positive one, I'm leaning forward and I'm engaging, I'm working with him. He's not a healthcare professional telling me what to do. We're working together. Words matter. I've sat on a few committees, and Karen will probably laugh at this one, but we know how I am with words. And when we see that there's a document saying that patients should have a healthy lifestyle, and then you read it further on, and then in the next paragraph, and you should be healthy, you should be healthy, you should be healthy. That's a huge assumption I've never tried. So I asked that the word is swapped for healthier, because we all want to be healthier from our starting point. Somebody could look at me at 16 stone and say, you're not healthy. Well, how do you know? I was 25 stone. I'm healthier than I was. So we can't make these assumptions about people. Words matter. They matter everywhere that we use them. So we are people first. I would have been at my heaviest. After bariatric surgery, I was at the lightest. But realistically, I'm going to be one of those two in between. Still have the same hair. Still have the same smile. Still have the bad sense of humour. I'm Susie. So treat me as a person. Don't look at the body size. It means nothing. That's me now. Quality of life is more than anything. So as I say, I'm now 16 stone. Some people would think that that is something that should be addressed, but I am healthy. I'm monitored. I have an endocrinologist, I have my doctor, I have my surgeon, all watching how my health is. This is the quality of life I have, and I'm still a partner. I'm still a daughter. I'm Susie. This is our group. We heard earlier Stuart say about people are assumed to be unintelligent, not have skills. There's Maura getting her degree. There's Catherine able to knit all her own clothes. We have a video that has all of these on it actually, showing our members living their best lives. There's Lorna doing archery. And these are our group walks. And there's a sad one there, you'll see the guy in the wheelchair. When I say about never reaching that number, the weight I am now, Willie Mates there, he used to join our stigma talks. And Willie was a captain of the ships. And he fell and he broke every bone in his body. And he was on painkillers and particularly diphene, and then his kidneys were damaged, so he was on kidney dialysis. He was 187 kilos, and the hospital didn't have the right equipment for him to go privately, so he had to wait publicly. He did everything he could, he was following his plan. He had bariatric surgery, and he got to 98 kilos, and they still wouldn't give him a transplant, because he wasn't 94 kilos. He died in February. BMI means nothing, nothing. So we're not lazy, we are motivated. This is our image bank. It's on our ICPO website. And this is to tackle stigma in the media. So we know that people use headless images, they use clothes that don't fit, they show people shoving a burger in their mouth, all the portrayals of people living with obesity, the assumptions. So we have our image bank there to be used, whether it's for a news article or for when you're hosting an event like this. We see that the safefood used our beautiful picture of Diane for this event. That's what's important. Stuart has said he used the images from ECPO and 2 other organisations. It's fantastic. It has to be how we address stigma everywhere we can, and images is a huge part of it. So now there's a video. Oh yes, it did work, great.
So an average morning for me would be waking up in bed. After lying overnight, I have aches and pains, especially in my lower back. The thought of having to get out of bed is a struggle.
When I'm traveling with public transport to my work, I usually feel that I am judged.
At work, they don't know my name. They all know me only as the fat construction manager.
People notice you and they stare.
Society, they're gonna give stigma no matter what. If you're not looking like this perfect person as they see on Instagram, we not all look like each other.
It's all day, every day. And then you wake up the next morning and it starts again.
I love to cycle.
I love swimming. My life is swimming. I teach swimming.
Painting. It's my new hobby, and I paint like a 6-year-old. I draw like a 6-year-old, but I'm having so much fun with it. I love it.
I'd love to see people change their judgments, to just take 1 second to pause before you speak.
People, if they were educated and understood what obesity was, perhaps maybe they wouldn't judge and shame people and they'd support them instead.
Let's actually have an aligned language, one that's mutually respectful. It is a disease. I have obesity. I'm not an obese person.
And I was going to talk a little bit about that, but Niamh had done it so brilliantly at the start, and Stuart, there's no need to repeat it, but I hope that just sort of reiterated the message of it. When you come away from a day like this, certain phrases or something can stick with you, and what Stuart said there about if you're neutral when there is an injustice, and you take the side of the oppressor. So we are all neutral if we don't call out weight stigma where and when we see it. You can do it respectfully. You can do it in a way by just simply dropping that video in on a comment if you see it on social media. There's ways you can do it, and I think we have to do it together. Thank you.